Hello, world, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Little Bit Different podcast with your host, Cory Sterling. Hi, I hope you've been great since we last connected, and I'm really excited to jump into the second episode, the title of which is Heart Leading Life. So, wow, living a heart-leading life is definitely a different way to live. It's a little bit of a roller coaster type of life with ups and downs, but it is something that is driven by your heart. And when you make decisions based on how you feel and where you are in the present moment and how that helps drive decisions for you, you're leading a heart-leading life. So the intention of this episode is to explain a little bit about what a heart-leading life is, define it, explain a little bit about where the concept came from. I'm going to share my first story that was my Eureka moment with living a heart-leading life. And I'm going to talk about how that led to one of the biggest and most important decisions that I've made in my life, and how living a heart-leading life impacts me today and continues to drive the decisions that I'm making on a daily basis. So I hope that you enjoy it. And here we go. So, what is a heart-leading life? A heart-leading life is when the decisions you make on a daily basis, because your life really is a composition of different decisions that you're making every day, when the decisions that you're making on a daily basis are driven by the question, how do I feel about this? And not, what do I think about this? How do I feel about this? And when we get into our feelings, where we allow our intuition to help guide us, and the idea, the philosophy, the approach, the rationale behind this is that we intuitively know what the best decisions for ourselves are. Sometimes we think ourselves into a decision and we think that we should be doing something, and when maybe something could be really simple and easy to tackle and address and decide around, we make it a little bit more complex because we're concerned about what other people think about the decision that we're making, or we're not sure if we're actually allowed to feel really good or to do things that we really love doing. And so that process gets a little bit jarred or stuck up or with congested, essentially. But what I'm here to share in all of my experience is that my firm belief that living a heart-leading life is the best type of life to live, and that you really can't have any regrets when you're living a heart-leading life, because you made a decision that in the present moment felt like the right decision to make. And it's impossible to make a wrong decision. If it's about a personal relationship, if it's about a lifestyle choice, if it's about a financial decision, everything, if you believe that everything is always happening for you and that your life is in the moment, it may not always make sense why certain things happen in a certain way, but if you believe that all of the decisions, so long as you decide them correctly, will lead you on the path that you're meant to be on, which requires a little bit of faith and positive expectation and belief. But if you believe that and you make the decisions based on how you feel, then the only thing you really have to do is just enjoy life, have fun with it, be light about it, be easy about it. So that's really an introduction to heart-leading life and the definition of it. So if the question is, how do I feel about this? And you're deciding, oh, this is how I feel. And some people are really quick. They know how they feel automatically. Some people need a little bit of time to process. I think it's important for everyone to follow their own navigation system and to follow what feels best for them and what feels most aligned for them. But ultimately, the first question should be, how do I feel about this? And the last question you should ask yourself before deciding something is, how do I feel about this? And so I want to start with the story of where heart-leading life as a concept came in. Also, if I pause, it's because I'm drinking my yerba mate, which feels good and feels right and is something that's been a great light and a great joy in my life. So I was living my life, going through things, doing things, and probably a lot of it was heart-leading. But I never was consciously aware of this question of, what is a heart-leading life? Am I leading a heart-leading life? And do I want to lead a heart-leading life? And from 2017 to 2019, for 3 years, I ran a yoga festival called the Muskoka Yoga Festival, which took place in Bracebridge, Ontario. And it was a wonderful experience running a yoga festival. And also what it taught me was how to take something from ideation and build it all the way through so that it's actually, you bring it to life. And I remember when I had the idea, I met my business partner at the time, Ashley Boone. We were at a yoga festival in Banff, at Banff Yoga Festival. And the woman who organized Banff Yoga Festival was a client of my law firm, one of my first clients, like probably my first 5 clients. And she and I met, and she's like, oh yeah, I have a yoga studio in Muskoka. And I was like, oh my God, I spent all my summers in Muskoka. We should put on a festival there. So cool, what a great idea, put on a yoga festival. We ended up meeting again, like maybe that was in April or May in Banff. And then we met at the end of the summer and we're like, cool, let's actually do this. And I just shared this story because this is my favorite story about Muskoka Yoga Festival. And we're like, cool, let's do it. So she and I started, and we put a reservation down for the site, and we bought the domain, and we bought the website, and we started looking for teachers and everything like that. And I'll never forget the festival in the first year was going to be in July. I think it was July 7th, July 8th, 2017. And we were doing a warm-up event in Toronto, Ontario, in January or December. And I'll never forget, my parents came, which was so cool. So 2 people there, my mom and dad, came to show up. My friend Ashley had a boyfriend or a guy she was seeing. That guy showed up. My friend Josh and his, at the time, fiance, now wife, Andy. Josh and Andy showed up. So that's 2, 4, 5. And then there was one stranger. We publicized this for weeks. We're posting, oh, come, let's talk about community. Let's create all of these things. And like one person showed up who was not our friends or family. And I remember thinking in that moment, oh my God, it's not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And we were packing up to close the night out. We were on the Queen Street store of Lululemon. They have a space called The Attic. I don't know if it's still there. We did the class at The Attic. Ashley taught. She's an amazing yoga teacher. And I'll never forget, we were like closing the door, dropping the key off downstairs. And I remember in my mind, I was like, oh my God, only one person came. And even before I had a chance to say anything to Ashley, as we were hugging to say goodbye, she was like, oh my God, Cory, this was great. One person came. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. That's great. And what's really cool is that event in January, February 2017, there was one person. Before I sold Muskoka Yoga Festival in 2019, we put on a festival in the woods and we had 600 people come out and camp and participate in the yoga festival. So it was a really big part of my life, and it taught me a lot about what's possible. And a lot of my process of learning to live a hard leading life came from that. And in the second year of that, my friend Jeff Odlifson, I call him Odie. I think you pronounce it Odlifson. Odie was a buddy of mine, and he still is a buddy of mine, but he came to help out for a week during the second festival, the second year. He and I were hanging out, and I told him, I said, yeah, I'm starting this law firm, and I think the tagline should be Heart Leading Law. And he looked at me and he's like, bro, Heart Leading Law, it's got to be Heart Leading Life. And that was a moment where I was like, boom, I love it, Heart Leading Life. I was just committed after that time. I didn't really know what it meant, but I was so into it. Then later that summer, it was 2018, after we put on the second yoga festival, 300 people came out the second year, which was really cool. And my friend Dan was marrying his amazing wife, Rachel, in California. And I did a road trip with all of my buddies through California, and we go to the wedding. And then at the wedding, I made a friend, and her name is Ray. And Ray was really, really funny, and Ray was really different and super spontaneous and like an amazing light and very different. Ray's very different. Everything Ray does is different. And she and I became buddies, just friends. And she lived in San Francisco. I was in we were in Southern California. I was going to San Diego to stay with my friend Isaac and Josh, who I love, who are my brothers. And I went to stay with them after the wedding. And I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to be in San Diego if you want to come hang out. She's like, oh, no, I can't. I got plans or something. Then just like randomly, spontaneously sends me a text message. And she's like, hey, I'm in San Diego. Where are you guys? I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know you were going to be here, but so nice that you're here. And Ray and I Me, Ray, and Isaac Perez, who's my brother and one of my best friends, had just like a weekend of the most fun ever. Just all we did was laugh. We were laughing, we were laughing, we were laughing. We went to Gratitude Cafe in San Diego, which, is definitely on point for how I live my life and the things that I love in life. I mean, there's a place called Gratitude Cafe. Shout out. And it came to be Sunday morning, and I had a flight back to Toronto, and I booked this flight like 2 months in advance. I was like, oh, okay, I know I'm going to the wedding, then I'll go to San Diego, then I'm going to book this flight. And we were at brunch, and I remember I was with Ray and Isaac, and I was like, guys, I really don't want to leave. I really don't feel like leaving. Like, this is so much fun. We're having a blast. I was staying at my friend Josh's parents' house, the churches. They're like the most amazing, hospitable, incredible people ever. I was like, I really don't, I have a place to stay. I really don't want to, but, I have my flight and I have to go. And Ray just turned to me. It was such a clear moment. She said, well, how do you feel? And I didn't even really think to include how I feel in the decision-making process, but I was like, I feel like I want to stay. Obviously, we're having the best time. And she's like, so just stay. And I was like, no, but I can't because I have the flight and I booked it. And I used to be very different before this moment. I used to think oh, this is what I planned and this is what I organized. So this is what I have to follow. And she's like, just call the airline and see if they can change it. And I was like, okay, that's a different approach. I'll try it on. I'm open to seeing where that goes. I left the table. I called Air Canada customer support. They were very friendly. And I said, hey, something's come up. Is it possible for me to change my flight and leave on Wednesday? And they were like, yeah, sure. It's going to be $75. And I was like, okay. She's like, okay, enjoy San Diego. Have a great trip. And I was like, I hung up. I was like, that was it? That's all that I had to do? And I came back and I told them, and everyone was happy because the fun got to continue. And then later, Ray and I were chatting, and she was explaining to me that for the decisions in life, you shouldn't think, what am I supposed to do? What did I plan to do before this present moment? And instead, it should be, how do I feel in this moment, and how can I let my feelings guide me? And how can I let my feelings take me? And I was very lucky. After that time in San Diego, I ended up meeting Ray in Ireland. She randomly flew out to Ireland for my friend Nicholas's wedding. And then I was going to South America, and Ray's just shows up. I don't know if she teleports places, but she would just show up places and randomly be there. And she and I went, we traveled in Peru and Chile together and in Argentina together. And we did a whole trip and we spent some time. And it's funny because there are those characters in your life who sometimes you meet someone and you think, wow, this person's really going to have a profound impact. And with Ray, I never really had any of those expectations. I wasn't like, wow, Ray's going to change the way that I make most of the decisions in my life. But Ray is probably the most influential character that I've met in the past 10 years of my life, because in traveling with Ray, I got to really see what it meant to live a heart-leading life and to make decisions in the moment and what that looked like, and go through. There are moments of uncertainty when you're living a heart-leading life, but most importantly, how amazing and how fun it was. It was just like everything we did turned out to be amazing because whatever we were doing, we decided in the moment what we wanted to do. So we were supposed to do this. Oh, let's change. We're going to go to this place. Oh, if not, we're supposed to stay here. No, let's actually go to that one. Whatever it is, it was spending time with Ray really, really showed me what it means to make decisions in the moment based on how I feel. And why this is so important is because Ray went to Hong Kong and then to Thailand, and I continued on to Brazil. At this point in my life, I had never been to Brazil before. And I always knew that I wanted to spend at least 3 months in Brazil and try to learn Portuguese. And what happened was I went, my friend John and Freddie called me. John sent me an email and he was like, hey, one of our friends backed out of staying at this beautiful place for New Year's. If you want, you can take his spot. He's already paid his deposit. So basically, like, you have a free room essentially to stay with us. And it's supposed to be a really cool Brazilian beach town. And I was like, awesome. I remember I responded to the email. I was like, tell me what the airport code is and what day and time I need to be there. and John hooked it up, and we went to a place called Trancoso, and it was me, John, and Freddie. Freddie is John's best friend, and the three of us were just the three musketeers having the most fun, the most incredible time ever in Trancoso over New Year's. It came time for John and Freddie to leave. John lives in Munich. Freddie lives in London. So, and now, I mean, John was my best friend before, but he still is, and Freddie's one of my best friends now. So I'm just like on this heart-leading train of all wonderful, amazing things happening. And the day before they left, we were at a beach bar, and one of the waitresses there was like, hey, it seems like you'd really like this place called Caraíva. You should go there. And John and Freddie were leaving. I didn't know where to go. So I was like, okay, we went back to the hotel. I asked the guys, I'm like, how do I get to Caraíva? Like, okay, we can call a moto taxi for you. They'll be here at noon tomorrow. I was like, cool. I show up to Caraíva, and Caraíva is unlike any place that I'd ever been in my life before. It's in southern Bahia in Brazil. It's essentially a peninsula that feels more like an island. And there's a beautiful river, and there's amazing ocean, and there's an incredible beach. And on the island, there's only sand. So there's no cars, there's no infrastructure, there's no traffic, there's no roads, there's no banks, there's really nothing except for this amazing, magical Brazilian beach town. And I loved it. I fell in love with it right away. And Caraíva was a place I was there, and I had spent some time there. And the first time I was supposed to leave, I missed my flight. I actually now have this terrible habit of missing flights. Thanks to Ray. If I don't feel like going, I just won't go. I don't do it anymore. And the first time I was meant to leave, I missed my flight. The second time I was like, okay, I have to go meet my friend in Florianopolis in Santa Catarina. So I got to Floripa. The moment I was there, I was sick for an entire week. The day that I got better was the day that I was flying back to Caraíva. And there was something about Caraíva that felt like the right place to be. I remember feeling that after 4 days of being in Caraíva, I made more friends than 4 years living in Vancouver. I was just like some gringo, walking around, having a good time, going to Forró, watching the sunset, meeting all the beach dogs, making friends. And I'm just like walk through the town, and Brazilians are so friendly. They're so insanely friendly. They're just like, hey, what's up, man? Hey. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. What's going on? Why does it feel like home? I don't even know what's happening. But it didn't, and it was. If we're talking about heart leading and how I felt like Caraíva was a place that I really should stay. And at this point, there's just a little bit of context that I have to share, because staying in Caraíva was one of the single biggest, most influential decisions for the course of my life, because because it was deeply impactful for me. And it really, in life, we have many forks and many different roads that we can travel. And when I was deciding whether or not I was going to stay in Caraíva, at that point, it was 2018, Conscious Counsel hadn't really taken off. It hadn't really, I was able to do a little bit. It wasn't anywhere of near where I wanted it to be. I wasn't really making the impact that I wanted to make in the legal world and in the health and wellness world. And I remember speaking to a lot of different people, and I was maybe speaking to business coaches or friends or other friends of mine who were entrepreneurs who were successful. And every single one of them told me to get out of Caraíva. And they said, the Wi-Fi, firstly, you're an online entrepreneur. What are you doing in a beach town that has choppy Wi-Fi? Like, calls were always dropping. There would be periods of blackouts where there was no Wi-Fi at all. And they're also like, what are you doing for networking? And I was like, networking? And, networking, A, no one speaks English. B, my Portuguese was very, very poor. Just super beginner, basic Portuñol, which is a combination of Portuguese and Espanol, Portuñol, because I was fluent in Spanish. And none of my friends had a career. None of my friends worked online. All of my friends either ran a pousada, which is like a small hotel, or they worked at the beach bar, and I would meet them at sunset when they were done their shift, and we would go out and have fun or whatever it was. But my friends were like, well, where's the network? Where, how are you meeting yoga studio owners? And where the trade show? And what about the conference? And like, there were all of these reasons and all of these things that I really should have done to build my business. There are things that I should have done to put myself in a better position to succeed. But because of the encouragement and the lessons that I received from Ray and this inspiration to live a heart-leading life, I sat back, I breathed, and the only question I had was, what do I feel like doing? And the answer was unequivocal. I feel like staying in Caraíva. Caraíva feels like the place where I should stay. And I disregarded all of the advice that anyone said to me. I think my parents were quite concerned. They're like, what's he doing in this Brazilian beach town? Is he going to come back? Is he going to come to a city where, because at that point, there was no evidence or no proof that, my business would really succeed and I would be able to achieve the type of impact and growth and financial abundance that I wanted to have. So there's the entire outside world that's saying to me, don't stay. What are you doing there? It's not the right place for you. But deep down inside of me, I thought, this is the place that I should be. I really feel like staying. I feel like there's something here for me. And the promise I made myself was, if I stay, there's no choice but to succeed. I wasn't doing it to prove anyone wrong. I didn't want to say to anyone, oh, look, I told you I can stay wherever I want and build my business. It wasn't about anything other than that. But I wanted to have both. I wanted to have the financial abundance and the growing business and the deep impact and building the community and all of those things. But I also wanted to stay in this beach town and see what life was like there and learn Portuguese and become part of the community and become a morador, which means a person who lives there. And I just promised myself, I was like, okay, Cory, you can stay. Just find a way to just make it happen, man. Just make it happen. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I found a way to make it happen. I met the right people at the right time, not there, everything obviously online. And I realized, like, what do I actually need to be doing? Would it make so much sense if I was at a trade show in Dallas? Or what can I do from while I'm here? Looking at the cards that I have, how can I play the cards that I have? And Caraíva is the place where my business just absolutely, completely took off and grew to an iteration that allowed me to do all of the things that I wanted to do, to have the lifestyle that I wanted to have, and to be the person that I wanted to be in the place that I wanted to be. And it goes against every natural instinct to think that I could do that there in that particular way. But now that I look back on everything, I had to be the person I was in Caraíva in order to build my business in the way that I did it. And I'll just give a small example. The thing that I loved about being in Caraíva and building my law firm there, like, there weren't other lawyers. There's nothing. I can't explain unless you've been to a similar place. Just imagine a place where people are fishermen or they're working at a beach bar and it's a domestic tourist place and there's nothing. But what I realized is I was so much more focused when I was working, because when I wasn't working, no one wanted to talk about work. Now, one of my friends was like, oh, Cory, what do you do? Like, my best friend, Pedrinho, who I love, who's my brother. Probably 6 months after we were best friends, he was like, oh, what do you do for work? Like, it's not that place. People don't ask each other what they do. And then I noticed whenever I would talk to my Canadian friends or be back in Canada and meet with people, everyone would I felt so much pressure. They'd be like, oh, like, and what about this? And are you growing in this way? And, oh, and this investment, and this is the thing that I'm doing. And I was just like, wow, this feels so heavy. There was some real lightness about life in a beach town where you're anonymous and no one cares about you. And you realize how insignificant you are because there's so many other things going on in the world. That really gave me permission, and it just put me in the right environment to be the person that I was meant to be, to build the business that I'm meant to build. And again, I attribute the choice to stay in Caraíva to meeting Ray and, to Jeff coming up with the term heart leading life and And for Ray telling me to ask myself how I feel, let that be the first question, let that be the last question before you decide. And I felt like staying in Caraíva. Now that I look back, it's like so completely obvious that that's the right thing to do and that that was the right thing to do. And so I just want to share that with everyone because it's different. It's really different to build an online law firm working with health and wellness professionals from a beach town in Brazil where nobody speaks English and there's no network and there's nothing. And I just had to figure out what resources do I have available? How can I do it from where I am? But most importantly, hands down, the reason why I was able to do it is because of the person that environment let me be. I was the best version of Cory when I was in Caraíva. Right now, I'm still the best version. I'm still the best version of myself, but I had to be that version of Cory in that particular place in order to build my business the way that I did. And that's what a heart leading life is. All of it's rooted to that singular question of how does it feel in this particular decision. And even if I'm looking forward into the future, and I'll just say this before I talk about the future. Since I've made that decision, well, firstly, I've missed a lot of flights. I missed 2 flights this week. This week I missed 2 flights, which is great. And it was the right decision to miss those flights. I know that. But in addition to that, I still continue to live my life in this particular way. And the continued success that I enjoy, I really attribute to asking myself how I feel and being committed to living a heart-leading life. So as an example, this week, I was meant to go to another town in Brazil. I was supposed to leave where I am right now, Praia. I'm in Praia, in Ceará. I'm in a kite surfing town. I kite surf every day. And I had a ticket and I was ready to go. And the night before I was supposed to fly out, I was kite surfing with my friends. It was sunset. There was this incredible, it was low tide. So it was very, very shallow right by the beach. It was the perfect sunset. And I was just like, I was flying. I was flying on the kite and I felt so good and so happy. And I thought, I'm not ready to leave this place. So I didn't leave and I decided to stay. And I think from a bigger picture, how it happened, and I'll talk about travel in future episodes and how I travel and how I make decisions when I travel. But I was in Rio de Janeiro in October and I bumped into an old friend, Marley, who I hadn't seen in 20 years. We both went to McGill University together. And we bumped into each other in Leblon, which is a beach in Rio de Janeiro. And we chatted for 90 minutes. And we were talking about life and what decisions we made that brought us to where we are and to be in Brazil at that particular moment. And we were chatting, and Marley, her family, I think, is from Senegal. I'm not sure, but I know that she lived in Africa. She worked in Africa. She's super intelligent, like highly, just such an accomplished individual and professional. And she just said to me, she's like, Cory, I think you'd really enjoy Mozambique. And that's all she said. And we didn't really go in depth or talk about it anymore, but I just let it sit and I was like, okay. Then we said goodbye, and then I kept walking and I was like, Mozambique, eh? And then I went home that night and I bought a one-way ticket to Mozambique, which is a trip that I'm going to depart on in less than 2 weeks from now. And that's heart leading. And that's just because I felt like it was a very fortuitous meeting with Marley, and the type of conversation we had and what we spoke about ignited inside of me a feeling that I was like, yeah, this really feels like the right thing. So that's where I'm going. I have a one-way ticket. I don't really know what's going to happen from there. I have a couple of smaller things planned, but I also don't need to figure that out now because I'm just going to wait till I get to that particular moment. And in the moment, I'll ask myself, how do I feel? So in summary, obviously living a heart-leading life is different. There are a lot of different factors that go into it, but also it's extremely simple. And the question is just, how do I feel? And one of the most common things that I'll hear people say is, oh, I have obligations and I promised to do this. And I know that all of that exists. And the only thing I can say in response is you have to remember that I'm sharing my version of what it means to live a heart-leading life, and you're the person who knows for yourself what it means for you to live a heart-leading life. I can't make that decision for you. You're the only one who knows how you feel. You're the only one who knows what feels right for you. And what I'm sharing are examples that come up in my life and experiences that I've had that prompted me to become disciplined in leading a heart-leading life, and the amazing, abundant rewards that I've received as a result. But what I want to just remind you in sharing before I wrap up is you're the only one who knows for you what feels right. Maybe, I have the freedom to buy a one-way ticket to Mozambique, and maybe you have that freedom and maybe you don't. But within wherever you're living and however you're living, you do have freedom for decisions to make in a heart-leading basis. And if you don't, my invitation to you is step back, look at your life. What are things that you automatically do all the time, that you just do because you've continued to do, and that you've been doing them for so long you just think that's what you have to do? And is there any room for change there? Because I'm certain that if you step back, you realize that there are a lot of things that are in your control to change, and that more and more decisions can be made in a heart-leading way. So ultimately, a heart-leading life is making decisions based on how you feel. This applies to fitness, health, friendships, relationships, business, lifestyle, travel. The first question you should ask when prompted with a decision to make, how do I feel? Think about it, go through it. The last question before you decide should be, how do I feel? That's it. It's sort of like the how I feel sandwich. Delicious. The term heart-leading life came to me from my buddy Jeff, who just in a moment of brilliance didn't want it limited to heart-leading law, but instead to be heart-leading life. My friend Ray was the one who really showed me what it means to lead a heart-leading life, with that first moment where I changed a flight that I thought that I wouldn't be able to change or rearrange. That prompted me to ask the question in different instances of my life, how do I feel about this? And it's in everything that I do, not just travel. It's in fitness and hiring and firing and what projects to take and what clients to take, everything. And that culminated in one of the biggest decisions in my life, to stay in a beach town and grow my business from there, because that's what felt right, as opposed to doing what I should do of going to Santa Monica or going to Miami or going to Costa Rica and going to places or Ubud in Bali, instead of being in places that were filled with potential clients in my niche, to stay where I felt like being and what felt right for me. And that decision-making process continues to this day. So it's a different approach. I don't think there's too many people who are going to share the same outlook, but it's one that's really, really beneficial for me. And I believe that it helps us live the best version of ourselves and achieve the joy and the happiness and the fulfillment that we want to have in our lives. So this has been the second episode of the Little Bit Different podcast. I hope you enjoyed, and remember to stay different.